So, hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Well, today in this video, let's add more animations. So first open up your project, opening up Unity Hub, then click on the name of your project. Make sure to only click on the name. Then Unity Hub marked close. If it does, it's fine. Do not open it up again. That's because Unity is opening. I forgot to tell you this in the last part. So you can see the Unity 2021 thing. Okay, starting server. This takes not a lot of time.
So now our player already has a nice running and idle animation. And in this part we will learn how to add more animations to our player, but without making a complete mess out of our code. Ready? Let's go.
Oh, and by the way, my actual yesterday's video is currently uploading and it's scheduled for tomorrow. So Christmas Day.
So the first step of course is to create our new animation. So we go into our animations folder in the assets folder. We right click and create a new animation file.
This yeah, if you want to see, this is what he's doing. So it's going to take me like 14-15 days to do this, more than a week. And it takes me a long time. Takes this a little bit to open. Oops. Yeah.
We call the first one player underscore jumping. And then we drag it onto the player object to add it to the animator. And then we open the animation window, select our player in the hierarchy, and select player jumping.
No, this only has one image as a jump. One.
And then we navigate to our player graphics in Pixel Adventure, Assets, Main Characters, Virtual Guy. And jumping and falling are only one image each. So the whole animation is just one image, which we drag into the animation editor here. And this also means that we don't have to change the samples because with one image we don't have a speed for this animation. It's just a static image, which looks like this. Then we repeat the same process for falling. So back into our animations folder. And of course you are free to put these animation files into any folder you want. So you can also put them directly into the virtual guide.
Okay, so Unity has loaded. You can see it's right here. So let's see.
So now our player already has a nice running and idle animation. And in this part we will learn new animation. So we go into our animations folder in the assets folder.
Just follow along. I actually organized it a bit more. So right click, create visit animation. Clear jump. So let's loop it. Let's loop our clear jump and press Ctrl 6 or Command 6. Why do why do we have to do that? So that we can open up our animation window. And of course, like always, we place it over here. Select our player, player jump. Oh, right, sorry. Drag player jump onto our player. That work. Where's my mouse? Player jump. Now we are going to Pixel Adventure 1. We can include the scenes, assets, main characters, whatever character you chose. Then jump. Did we set it to 16? Did we set the pixels per unit to 16? Yes, we did. So we just drag this over here. Now let's see if it works. It won't work right now, of course, but yep, it works. Okay, so now let's
We right select player jumping. And then we navigate to our player graphics in Pixel Adventure, Assets, Main Characters, Virtual Guy. And jumping and falling are only one image each. So the whole animation is just one image, which we drag into the animation editor here. And this also means that we don't have to change the samples because with one image we don't have a speed for this animation. It's just a static image, which looks like this. Then we repeat the same process for falling.
okay, so let's do a falling anime. My neck hurts. I mean, that's something to stop now. Okay, so right click, create animation, player, player, fall. Let's drag that onto our player. We drag the clip onto our player. Come on, which we have already done, and we loop. Then we open up our animation window. What just happened? No! What did this do? Oh no! Why? Huh? What? Okay, so we've got player fall right here. Oh, okay. Now, after doing that, we drag this over here so that we can head over into our Pixel Adventure assets. Second. Okay, so we can head over into Pixel Adventure assets, main characters, virtual guy, and we can drag a fall animation into here. Now we can just drag our animation window over here, and looks like we're done with the animation part. And we can preview it like this. But of course, we'll need code to actually control it. But before that, we have to close our animation window by clicking on it with the middle mouse button and open up our animator. Or as some people would say, animator. But I say animator. Now, you can see it looks a bit weird, clogged. Oh, okay, I guess we have two player falls, so we can just delete player fall 0. Now we position this in a way that we like it. So this should be good. Now we make transitions from every block to every block. So we can do that easily by making transitions. So from that to that, from that to that. Now we select this, we uncheck has exit time, we set transition duration to 0, do the same for that. Now let's just
So back into our animations folder. And of course, you are free to put these animation files into any folder you want. So separate. So it has the correct size. And here we also don't have to change the samples value. The next step is to add these two new animations to the animator of the player. Animation. And now this looks a bit messy because we have two new animations. Let's drag them somewhere so it looks good, but it doesn't matter where you drag them exactly. It should just give you a good overview. And then we have to create connections basically from all animations to all the other ones, because we can switch from all animations to all the other ones. We can switch from idle to running, but also from idle to jumping, for example.
okay. So he's doing the transition thing. I've done to jump. I think I should position these in the way that he's done it. I don't know why I feel like that, but let's just do it because it doesn't hurt. Now we right click on idle, we make a transition to fall, we click on the transition, we uncheck has exit time, transition duration is equal to 0. We do this until every okay, so we're done with everyone to idle. Now it's time to now you might see this any state block. You do not want to use that because we're going to use it for death. We have an animation for that. And we do not want to touch that because we don't want to switch from death to any other one of these because we shouldn't be able to. So we can see that only 2 more transitions are left. Oh no, not 2, but 3 more 3 more animations are left. So we can just right click on jump, make a transition to fall. We can click on that as exit time, transition duration. Now last 2. These are actually the last 2. And last one, from jump to run, and it's this one. So we can just uncheck has exit time. There we go, we're done.
We can also jump while we are running. I mean, normally we have falling first, but I think there can be situations where we can go from the jumping animation immediately back to idle. Maybe, for example, when we jump on a higher platform.
I so let's actually open up our script. So we can head over into scripts, not Pixel Adventure. So we can just close that. So scripts, and we can double click on our player movement script since we're going to need it. Because why not?
We can, of course, go from jumping to falling and immediately back to jumping again. And we can go from falling to running and from running to falling if we run over an edge. We can go from running to jumping, from jumping back to running, and from idle to falling, and from falling back to idle. And that's it. Now you might have noticed this any state thing here. This is actually meant for what exactly we just did manually. Any state that should be available from any other state can just be added to this part here. We could use it right now, but in the future we want to have a state that doesn't go back to any of these other states, and that's the def animation. This means we can't add these to any state because we don't want to be able to go back from any state to any of those ones here. Now before we forget it, let's quickly go to our animations again. In the animations folder, falling, and set them to looping.
We've done this already.
Otherwise we only see the image for a fraction of a second and then it's gone. And now we want to switch between our different animation states, and of course we do this in our player movement script.
Yay! So I can alt tab over to play movement. I have it on the second monitor, so I can just drag it over here. I don't actually have a second monitor, I'm just using my iPad as it. Whatever. Okay, so we've got this. So let me just tell you, we're going to make our own thing, like private rigid body 2D, private animator. We're going to make our own using enums or enums.
So let's double click, open Visual Studio. Now of course we could add additional booleans to our. So wouldn't it be nicer if we had one variable that manages the animation state? Because these different animation states, idle, running, jumping and falling, are mutually exclusive, right? We can't have two animation states at the same time. And we can actually create a variable that can contain any of these four. We create a private enum and we give it a name. I'm gonna call it movement state.
That's good. I'm actually going to set my quality to low since my laptop fans are blowing so hard, so I'm going to set it to 720p because I need to. So we have to create our enum or enum. I'm going to create it in the private float dirs. I'm going to do private enum. Let's just call it movement state, just like he did. We add curly braces, push space, go back, push space. Now we need semicolon. I don't think we do. We will just do private movement state.
Like this. The name is up to you, just pick a name that fits. And then we create a pair of curly braces. With such an enum, we create our own data type. Just like we have variables with the data type rigid body 2D or with the data type float, we can now create a variable with the data type movement state. And the cool thing about this is that this variable can only hold the different states we put between these curly braces and nothing else. And this way we can create this finite set of values. So when we in here between these curly braces write idle, comma, running, comma, jumping, comma, falling.
So let's just do what we wrote in there. So idle, comma, run, comma, fall, comma, jump. If I can even spell it correctly, jump. And what's oh, we forgot a semicolon after the private movement state. What's error? Right, we of course need to
then our movement state variable can only hold either of those 4 values. So when we call our movement state variable state, which is the variable name, which can be anything you want, we can set this, for example, to movement state.idle. This works, but we can't set this to 6, for example. Then the compiler will complain, because this is
Let's do private movement state. We'll just like heat it. Let's set to movement state dot idle. Simple. Got no errors.
not a valid value for movement state. But we can set it to player.jumping, for example. Now, when we later use this in our animator, they will actually be converted to int values, to whole numbers. And when we hover over any of these values here, we can see the corresponding int value. So we start at 0,
1.
idle, running is 1, jumping is 2, falling is 3, 4, 5, and so on. And when we go back into our Unity project, after waiting for a few hours,
Seconds, I think.
we can remove our running boolean here because we won't use it anymore. So let's just click on it and press delete on the keyboard. Yes, we want to delete it. And
or let's do it right now. I've not saved it, so it won't compile. So we have to delete our running parameter. Let's do it. It's deleted.
Create an int parameter instead, because Unity doesn't know about our movement state enum. But as I already said, we can convert it to an int. So let's just call it state.
Okay, so we have to create an integer.
This way we don't have to manage a bunch of different boolean values. Instead, we just have this one variable and we can change our animation state depending on it. Now the next step is a bit tedious. We have to go through all our connections here and add the corresponding state value to the conditions. So let's do that. Let's start with all the errors that point to idle. Remember, idle has the integer value 0.
Okay, so my idle has an integer value 0. So we can just stds, hooray. So it's just inside of conditions, let's just do state.
So we go from running to idle under the condition that state is, and here it's important that you choose equals. Because now that we have whole numbers, we have these different options, greater than, less than, and so on. We want to switch to idle only if state is exactly equal to 0, which is
Okay, so 0 is not greater than 0, but is equal to 0. And we have to do this a bunch more times. So what I would do right now is just space these apart so that we can see the arrows more clearly. So we've done it for this arrow, haven't we? Yes, we have. Now it's time for this one. State equals 0. State equals 0. Then which one else is pointing? So that, and that. So we're done with those.
Remember to untick has exit time and equals 0 here as well. Then we have one that points from falling to idle. And that should be all animations that go to idle. It should always be 3 transitions to each of our 4 different states. So next let's take care of running. So everything that points to running has the condition that state is 1.
Is it 1 for me? It is. So everything that points to running is going to be state equals 1. Then this one also points to running. State equals 1. This one also points to running. So we have 3 for each. State equals 1.
Because remember, the int value of our running enum is 1. So this one points to running. This one points to running. We set this up properly. State equals 1. And okay, the next one is falling. And if you forget one, don't worry, you will later notice it. When we play our game, something will be off. But we can always change this.
So my next one is actually falling. Yep. My next one is falling.
Let's go to jumping next actually, because this has the int value 2.
My falling has the int value 2. Doesn't it? It does. Let's just do jump here and fall here so that it can match. There we go. So the jump has the int value 2. So everyone to jump is 2. Add a condition, state equals 2. One also points to jump. State equals 2. Oh, that's later. I almost made a mistake there. Then this last one points to jump. So state equals 2. Now it's time for fall. So it's going to be equals 3. So state equals 3. Then one. State equals 3. And one last one. I've done that, and so jump to fall is going to be state equals 3. And we're done. It was tedious, but it's fine.
Which has the int value 3. Up, we will notice it earlier or later, but it looks good to me. Nice. Now let's go back into our player movement script.
And there's an ad coming. Please don't be game maker. Just please don't be game maker. Not even loading. Just click up.
And set the state value at the correct places. First of all, we delete this line here because we don't need this variable. We will set the state directly on our animator, the same as we did it before with.
Oh, delete our private movement state equals movement state. Let's just delete that.
Our running boolean. So we remove this line, and then we go into our update animation state method here. Now we don't want to call anim.setInteger over and over again, because it's very tedious to write it out again and again, and it also makes it more likely to add mistakes or typos in the variable name. Instead, we want to call it one time at the end of our method with anim.setInteger, where as the first argument we pass the name of the variable in unit here. So it's state with the
Okay, so we scroll down over here and we type in anim.set integer. Going to pass our name as a string. It needs to be exactly the same.
exact same spelling, comma, and the value of the animation state. For this, we create a local variable at the start of update animation state of type movement state, the enum we created, and we call it state, but we don't assign a value yet. We will assign the correct value depending
Movement state. So we have to create a movement state type variable. So movement state state
if we are moving left or right, jumping, falling, and so on. So below it. So in the first branch, dirx greater than 0, we remove the set bool call, and instead we just want to set our state to movement state dot running.
Okay, so let's do it. So we, instead of this, we do state equals movement state dot run. We add a semicolon. Over here we also do movement state to run. So state equals movement state dot run. Can be a little tedious, but whatever.
We want to do the same here. So let's replace this. And here we want to set the state back to idle.
So this is going to be, no state equals movement state dot idle at the very top. Add a semicolon. There we go.
Which has the same effect as before, just that we now use our enum. And below the last else, we put another if check for our jumping animation. Now it's important that you don't write else if here, because we want to check for jumping even if we already checked for running, because jumping has a higher priority. So even if we already said, okay, we are moving left or right and we want to apply the running animation, we still want to check if we need to replace it for the jumping animation, because while we are in the air, we don't want to see a running or idling animation at all. So we put it below the if-else blocks for the running animation, and this way it will execute this part first, and then it will execute the part here below, which means that our state will be overwritten if we are actually jumping or falling. If this sounds confusing to you, just think your way through what is happening here a few times, and then
So let's just add an if statement. So if what?
try to draw a picture in your head how the state is changing under the different conditions, and then you will eventually get it. Because this is not complicated, it's just a bit confusing. Now for jumping, we don't have an axis value like our dirx we have for the horizontal movement that we could use to check here. Now theoretically, we could switch to the jumping animation in the get button down block here. But think about this. This will only be executed one time, and then in the next frame, this will already return false because we are holding the button. We are not pressing it down anymore, which means that we would apply this animation, but in the next frame, we would execute update again, and we would overwrite the jump animation with the running or idling animation because those are checked for in each frame, because the dirx value keeps its velocity ground. As we are in the air, here is velocity.y is greater than 0.
So if rb velocity dot y, rb dot velocity dot y is not equal to but is greater to 0, greater than 0. Why can't I speak?
Then we know that we are jumping because we have a force upwards applied. Makes sense, right? We are not standing on the ground. Now instead of 0, we write 0.1f here because there's
Oh, 0.1f. Oh, no. What's 0.1d? 0.1 double? Double is actually a variable type.
actually a bit of imprecision when it comes to these velocity values. They are not exactly 0, even if we are not moving. So if you would check for exactly 0, we would still get a jumping or falling animation because the value is never exactly equal 0. Instead, what we do is we use a very small value. Now 0.1f is enough, but you can even go smaller because actually the imprecision is much, much smaller. It's like 0.0000 something 1, but this is fine. This works properly and it looks good. So if the y velocity is greater than 0.1, we know that we have an upwards force applied, which means that we are jumping. So we set the state to movement state dot jumping.
That's easy. And we're done.
If this is not the case, we want to check if we might be falling. So below we write else if rb.velocity.y is less than minus 0.1f. So we have a downward force applied. Then we want to set the state to state.falling.
Movement state dot falling, not state dot falling. So we just triple click, press Ctrl C, and we do else if, hold on, yeah, else if rb dot will get vector equals c what? rb dot velocity dot y is small smaller than, oh, oh, oh. I'm using the Sanskrit keyboard for some reason. I don't know whether I am or not. I think I'm not. What? Oh no. So if I were to type in b dot velocity dot y, this is actually Sanskrit. I'm using the Sanskrit keyboard. Actually, I have the English keyboard only, but Sanskrit keyboard, yeah, you get the point. Is smaller than minus 0.1 f. Then we do the same exact thing. Oops. But we set the state instead of jumping to falling. Now, three errors because we didn't do some stuff. He also has two errors.
So now we set state to a value in each of these branches here. And then down here, we just want to pass it and close it with a semicolon.
And we have done that before? I don't know. There we go. And we close it with a semicolon. Cannot convert from player movement of movement state to int. Why? We've got state over the movement state. What? Oh, he also has it.
Now this shows a warning because this expects an integer and our state is our enum. But as we already said, each of these enum values has an integer value to it. So what we have to do is we have to go before state here and in parentheses we write int. This casts.
Okay, so this passes the integer values. And we don't have anything called int state. So there we go. Now it should work.
This state value to an int. So it turns the enum into its corresponding integer representation, which we can then use in the animator in Unity. So let's save the script. And since we have already set up all the different animation transitions, this should now work. So let's go back to Unity
I think.
and run our game. And we can also keep the animator tab opened to see how we are switching between these different animations. We're jumping, falling, and
Okay, so let's see if our one works. So let's see this. Oh, what one? There we go. Now it should work. I forgot to put parentheses over them. This is going to compile our player movement script and all of our scripts in 10 seconds, 41 minutes. In reality, it's been like more than 2 hours for me. But the thing that you actually see is 41 minutes long. So we can just let it compile the C sharp scripts. It's doing the script assemblies. I can't even speak, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Set it load. Oh, oh, there we go, there we go. This is the last thing. If you don't know, just going to repaint every single thing. Now we can head over into scene view. We can head over into play mode. I'm just going to reload the script again. Of course, why wouldn't it? When we build, it's going to take a while to build, but after it's built, now if your FPS is very low, just don't worry about it. Oh, you can see that fall animation, right? So we can run, we can see our jump animation, all our animations work. Okay, so we don't have a grounding chip, that's fine. And if we start falling, we're just falling, and of course we can jump up. So this is great. That's nice. So we can pick up this. You can try it out for as long as you want, but it's boring, right? We haven't actually made a goal yet. Oh no, oh no, oh, I did nothing. That's fine. Hmm?
It looks good to me. And we switch between the different states at the correct time. Of course, we can still jump while we are in the air, but we will take care of this in a moment. Now, instead of DIRX, we could also use the X velocity to check if we are running or standing still. That's up to your personal preference. When we do it like this with DIRX, we only switch to running if we actually press any of the movement keys. If we would use the X velocity, then we would also switch to running if we apply velocity through any other means. For example, collision with an object. That's up to your personal preference. I think it makes sense to use the velocity when jumping or falling, but I prefer to use the horizontal axis for the running animation. Now our game actually starts looking like a game, so don't give up now, we are almost halfway through the tutorial. In the next part we will take care of some little bugs we have right now, for example that we can jump while we are in the air. So stay tuned for the next part, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you there.
Okay, so we're done with this video. Now, I'm just going to play the game, and bye bye. Time to upload this video.